Hello guys, welcome to my video tutorial on Amazon Web Services. In this specific tutorial, we will talk about how to get started with the Amazon Web Services. That is, how to create an account, how to interact with AWS, what are different means to interact with the AWS, and learn about the management console. If you already know how to use AWS, then you can skip this tutorial. I would suggest you watch my previous two tutorials on AWS before starting this. So let's dive deep into creating an AWS account. So let's start with the basics of how to interact with AWS. There are three ways of interacting with the AWS. The first one is AWS console, which is a web-based interface. The second one is AWS command line interface. And the third one is AWS SDK kit. We'll discuss all three in detail. Let us first look into the AWS Management Console. AWS Management Console is a web-based interface and provides an app-based interface for mobile as well. It supports all major browsers and mobile operating system. Here's an example of a browser version of console. AWS console is a great way to test out AWS services. So for instance, if you are running AWS for the first time and if you want to spin up a virtual machine, then it is a go-to interface. Usually it's easy to use console for standalone tasks, but it's not suitable to do the repetitive tasks. For that, we have AWS CLI and AWS SDK. So let's first discuss about Amazon command line interface. AWS CLI is a tool to manage AWS services from the command line. It supports Windows, Mac, and Linux. So most of the tasks that can be done in console can be done with the command line interface. You just download and configure one tool and you can control multiple AWS services from the command line and automate them through the scripts. You can use Linux shell programs like bash to run the commands, or in Windows you can use Windows PowerShell or command prompt. Or you can also run commands remotely through the remote terminal programs like PuTTY or SSH. So this is an example of using the command line interface to describe the instance, to start AWS instances with the specific IDs. We'll discuss about the command line interface. And the third one is Amazon AWS Software Developer Kit, or SDK as it is called it. So AWS SDK allows to use a programming language to script the process of how we interact with the AWS. It supports different programming languages. As you can see, it supports C++, Go, Java, JavaScript, .NET, Node.js, PHP, Python, and Ruby. So AWS supports these programming languages for any developer who are working in these languages. AWS SDK supports automation of AWS tasks within the custom application. So now that we understood the three ways to interact with AWS, let's first start setting up a AWS account. But before you start, you will need a debit or credit card along with the address to create an AWS account. In order to create an AWS account, type in aws.amazon.com. This will take you to the AWS page. Over here, if you click on the free tier, Amazon provides free tier details. So for compute, Amazon provides 750 hours per month of any Linux, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or SLES T2 Micro and T3 Micro instance. We'll discuss about what these instances are in further videos. And same with the storage, you can use 5 GB of standard storage. With the database service, or RDS, which is Relational Database Service that Amazon provides, you can use 750 hours per month of T2 Micro database. And similarly, there are other free tier utilization limit that you can use without having to pay for the Amazon service. So now in this specific tutorial, we'll focus on creating a free tier account. Let's create a free account by clicking on create a free account. So first you need to pass in your email address, then pass in your password, and finally give a alias name for your account. I name it Techie and Travel and continue to next step. Then it asks you to choose the plan. I'm gonna choose the personal one and pass in the full name. And you pass in your phone number, you pass your country region, you pass your address, city, state or region, and the postal code, and click on continue. On the next step, it asks you to enter the credit card or debit card number, its details. So you just put in those details and click on verify and continue. On the next step, it will ask you to send a verification code to your number, enter your phone number, and click on the security check. As you see, it asked me to verify the code that was sent in my cell phone, which I'm gonna enter here and press continue. It asks me to sign up for the support plan. I'm gonna choose the basic support or the free and complete the sign up. And it provides me a click and tab to go to the AWS Management Console. I am clicking it, and finally my registration is complete, and it asks me to sign in with the credentials that I provided earlier. As you see, once I enter the root credentials and password, it takes me to the AWS Management Console. It is important to note that root user is a special kind of user. It is the user that is created when you create your AWS account, and it has special permissions that no other user account has, like selecting the support plan, updating it, and deleting the account. So another user that has access to the AWS console, like IAM user, is the best way to log into the account, and we will talk about setting up IAM user account in a bit. So on a high level, you can see my user info. If you click on it, you can see the details like account, my billing dashboard, my security credentials. In addition, we have a drop down to select the AWS region. Currently, I am in US East or North Virginia. If I create any resources right now, all of those resources are gonna be in US East or North Virginia. If I select any other specific regions, for example, US East Ohio, then any instances or any resources that I create within the AWS are gonna be in a Ohio region. So it's very important to note this. Let me get back to my US East region. So if you look at the services drop down in here, you can see the list of all AWS services, and they are grouped into different categories. For now, this is the high level overview of how to create your AWS account and then get started with it. Now next, let's look into the AWS CLI. If you type in install AWS CLI, it will provide you the link to the AWS documentation that has CLI installation instructions for Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. I'm going to click Windows in here. So the first installation instruction is to either download the AWS MSI installer or to execute the command in the command prompt. I'm going to download the MSI. You click on the MSI installer and follow the instructions to install the command line interface. To verify that our AWS CLI installation is complete, let's check it. Type in command and get your command prompt and type in AWS -- version. If it's successful, you will get this prompt, which shows us that we have a AWS CLI version 2.4.15 and AWS CLI is based on Python, so it by default installed the Python version 3.8.8. So this is it for the AWS CLI install. Now let's look at the AWS SDK install. For the AWS SDK install, if you type in install AWS SDK CLI, Google is going to show you the documentation link to set up AWS SDKs. So I click on it, and then if you see here, we already downloaded and installed the AWS CLI. Now we are going to install the AWS SDK. Let's click on this link. Depending on the specific programming language that you use, you can click and install the SDK. Now that we have configured the AWS CLI and SDK, in order to use the AWS command line and SDK, we need to configure the AWS root user or IAM user access keys details. So let's hop into that next. Here I click on the AWS Management Console, and under the services section, I have a category security, identity and compliance. If I click on it, I can see IAM. Let me click on IAM. You can see you can create your IAM users in here. Let me click on the users. Let me click on the add user and add an IAM user. For the purpose of test, I'm just gonna click test. So it asks me the security credential type. Either it is a access key or the programmatic access, which we are going to use for the CLI. So I'm going to click on access key and select next. For now, I'm not worried about creating a groups, which I will configure in the later sections. Click on tags. Create the user. So this is just for the demo purpose that I have created the test IAM user. Now, if you click on your username, you can see there is a security credentials. Click on security credentials. Now there is a section called access keys. Access keys are critical. This is the way we control authentication and authorization when we use the AWS CLI and SDK. So I'm going to select the access keys, and rightly so, AWS provides a warning saying that root user access keys provide unrestricted access to your entire AWS account. So you should not be using the root user access key for day-to-day tasks, but rather use the IAM user with limited permissions. But for the purpose of demoing the AWS CLI, I'm going to create the access key. So AWS wants us to download the key, and that it is only going to show us one time. If I click on the show access key, it provides me the access key ID and the secret access key, which are useful in configuring the AWS CLI. So let me take a note of that. Let me download the key file. Now let's hop into the command prompt and configure the AWS CLI. We can check the AWS CLI version by passing AWS -- version command. Now let's create a profile with the access ID and access key ID that we saw earlier. Although it is not recommended to use root user access keys for doing the regular task, this is just for the purpose of demo, and I'm going to remove it immediately after showing it in this demo. So let us configure a profile. I'm going to name it Techie Test. It asks me for the AWS key ID, which we created earlier. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it, and then it asks for the access key. Similarly, I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it, and then it asks me if the default region, which is US East 1, and then the default output in JSON format. So now that we have configured the AWS CLI to use the profile techie test, which has our access key details, let us try to list the IAM user we created earlier. If you remember, we created a test IAM user. AWS IAM list users list the IAM users in your account, but since we have our credentials in techie test, we have to pass that profile. If you see, it lists the IAM user test that we created earlier. So there are a lot of commands that you have to learn for using the AWS CLI, which we are going to use in the later sections when we start automating the tasks. So this is it for the AWS management tutorial. If you like it, please like, share, subscribe and comment on my channel. I will be covering the other AWS services in detail going forward, and I have 2 more tutorials already on basics of AWS fundamental and basics of AWS VPC and core concepts with the basic AWS services that you have to understand if you want to work as a system administrator. So please check out those 2 YouTube videos. I will post the link in the description down, and keep learning. Thank you.